do, 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 do. There was some big band music playing. Was that big band music playing, or was the part of Los Lobos playing there, Stephen? That
Los Lobos.
as long as it's stuck in my head. Earlier today, uh, you ain't got if you ain't got that swing. I think that's the name of the song. If you ain't got that swing, it was Tony
Yeah.
Bennett singing that, and Clayton Coleman is drummer doing a drum solo, and that was stuck in my head the whole time we were working on the arbors and the wattle fences at the library, and it was kind of good because there was this rhythm to it, and there's a rhythm to weaving wattle too.
Well, there's something about that big band music, that era, those kind of songs. You could hear six different versions of that same song and it's got the same basics, but the rest of it is really cool. I think.
Susan's having a hard time growing in Southern Florida. Our friends Dennis and Carol live half the year down in Southern Florida, and they said that they've been doing it for 20 years or so now. But they said it was a heck of a thing they had to get used to. I'm going to see my friend Martha in South Carolina for next week, and we're going to see about putting in a garden that I started designing for her while we were there last October. And I'm basically going to have to go wander through other gardens to see what kinds of things grow. I can go by the book, but it's much better to see what actually grows. I know that with Dennis and Carol, listening to them talk about I always forget what they're called. They're blue flowers, and kind of they're the hostas of the South. Agapanthus. Agapanthus is just a wild thing, kind of like the orange daylilies up here, and canna's taking over and hibiscus taking over, and that if they didn't prune, I can't remember which fern it was, twice a year, it would take over. Or our friend Sherry, who went to Hawaii, she would call me and ask me about, how do you suppose I should prune this? And I go, how would I know it? All I can grow it as is a plant in a pot that's going to die at the end of the year. You're looking at it in the shrub form. And she also was explaining to me that there's no yard waste pickup. You have to just figure out what to do with all of this tropical stuff that you're constantly cutting back. That's a tough thing to do.
And
So,
Schiffelera blooms. I never knew Schiffelera bloomed.
yeah, right. And it is different. I've seen designs done by I forgot his name. He's passed away now, but he's a famous landscape designer in Brazil. And his designs don't focus on flowers because they have flower all the time, like you have in Hawaii. There's some,
Yep.
each plant that's there has some flowers on it all the time. Here, as you get further north, we have this massive explosion of bloom in the spring, which we should be thankful for because that's why the birds come up here. The
So do
explosion.
we. There's more in the spring, to my amazement.
Yeah.
There's a definite spring bloom.
Yeah. So what would you suggest, Corky? You moved to Hawaii. Here's Susan, who moved to Florida, and she's looking for suggestions on who to go to for advice. I mean, I would go start walking through gardens.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if there's garden walks on a club, go there. But the public gardens, go walking through it and find one that's labeled so that you can read what the heck those things are. I feel like I'm on Mars when I go into a place that I've never been to before. I look around. I used to at home. I can look at a bunch of trees on the side of the road and I know what kind of trees they are. But I go other places and I don't know anything about anything.
Yeah, but I have this friend called Janet. When you call her about a tree in Hawaii, she knows the name. So,
Yeah, there are some
beautiful tree. It's a sidewalk tree, and it's got this kind of flower. And she says, "Oh, that's a cassia." Nobody here knew that.
I have gotten for quite a while. For quite a while, I've known Cindy, who grew up in the Philippines and moved here, and she would go home and visit and send me things, and I got things from there. And when I was writing for the Detroit News, a couple of times I got letters from people, well, email when it switched to emails from people in India and Thailand. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. Very different kind of situation. But that's what I would do, Susan. And don't plant anything yet. Just go start looking around, and if you can talk to people about what it is that you're seeing, then at a professional, if it's a public garden and the gardens themselves are out there, then talk to the gardeners. Most of the time they don't mind. They're, as long as you don't get in their way. they'll tell you about what it is, and you can say, do you have to prune it to keep it small? Is it invasive? I mean, they'll tell you in a minute, oh man, don't plant this one.
Oh, if it's invasive at one of the botanic gardens and you see a worker, they'll definitely tell you not to plant that one because they become big problems for them.
So we should start again since that's our warm-up part. So Free for All Friday, welcome gardeners. We're celebrating growing and cultivating problem solving here. This is our third Free for All, and we're fun. We're geeked about doing it. I'm Janet McConovich.
I'm Stephen Nicola, and that's usually what we're doing. She's got her nose in the plants, and I'm taking pictures of the plants. And often we have our daughter Sonia helping us, especially on the webinar. She's very special, can help us run the chat. So this is different for us. We're taking turns who runs the chat. It's not, we find out how much she works. We've been writing for a long time, and we put a lot of our writings onto gardenataz.org. That's our website. We have a ton of information on there. Janice was writing for the Detroit News, and then we both wrote for Michigan Gardener. Then we started writing for ourselves and putting it up on the website. And that all led to doing webinars and now Free for All Fridays, because we get all these questions. Janet had over 11,000 questions when she was writing for the Detroit News. And you can't answer them all in the newspaper, and you can't even answer them all on our website. So that's why we're doing this. We learn by you asking us questions.
Yeah, and Carol's got her problems with daffodil foliage thinning it out because her Dutch master bulbs have become bullies, and she's going to take about half of them or take them out and remove them. What's your current recommendation about bulb foliage? In the past, I've cut it down once it is in the way with no loss of bloom. So she's been doing what we've been doing, which is when we're tired of looking at the spent daffodils, they're done, and the foliage is just kind of sitting there till July like it usually does. I'll just go ahead and cut it down. Sometimes I cut it down just by half because I just need it short enough to be covered by the things that are coming up, or I need it short enough to allow light to get to the things that are coming up around its feet. And I just keep doing that. If you leave them, you're definitely going to get more increase on your bulbs, but I've got them to the point where I don't want any more increase. There's enough of them out there already, and they're a problem to dig up. Once they get to be big bullies, like you're talking about there, digging up one clump of daffodils will end up giving you 50 daffodils that you don't know what to do with. And when you dug up the clump, it broke off the little ones that are still in the soil, kind of like that. Oh, that Star of Bethlehem, Stephen. I didn't go out there. I meant to go out there and get
And that means I have to while you're gone.
Well, either that or I'll find time to do it tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah.
Talking about the daffodil foliage, and Corky was saying that she's always doubled them over and left one leaf sticking out. And I had just commented that we decided long ago that we had better things to do with our time than to braid daffodil foliage or roll it up and put a rubber band around it. And the more we thought about it, that if you braid them or roll them up, you've covered the leaf surface. They're not photosynthesizing anymore. So if you're going to roll them up or braid them, and that's going to cover half the leaf surface, certainly won't hurt to cut half the leaf surface off. So we just started cutting. And it's part of it, part of our operating slogan that you don't know the plant till you've killed it. We got to the point where I said, there's too much daffodil foliage and I hate looking at this stuff. And if it kills it, too bad. What do you think of Stephanandra as a ground cover? Steve?
Well, we've used it at least in 5 different places and wish we could grow it here.
It's a great.
If you put it in a spot where you don't have to do anything, it's a really, really good ground cover, and it's beautiful. It's got the it flows, and it has a very fine texture.
And it fits into our name garden for the Steve. We needed a Steve, so we got a Stefan in there.
Yep.
Don't plan on cutting it though. It's going to Stephanandra is going to we use cut leaf Stephanandra, so it's kind of a smaller leaf and a crinkly edge on the leaf, and it comes up to about 2 feet maybe, and then it bends over, and where it touches the ground, it roots and takes off. So it becomes this big tangle it's not something you can walk through or dogs can run through. In one of the places where we used it as a ground cover, we did keep it cut back because we didn't want it to get up to 3 feet, which it'll mound up to over time. And it's a lot of work to cut it. So put it where you can use it. Is it at Cornell that it's on the bank, Steve, on that bank?
Yeah. Yep. And
Yeah, Cornell's plantations.
along the front of my brother's house in horrible soil, we put it there where nothing, and it does a really good job there.
And Levon is wondering about help, needs help with killing thistle. Do we have a recipe or does she need to use Roundup? I'll let other people.
Our recipe is dig it out usually. But if it's an intense amount, you may have to use a herbicide.
We've been able to get ahead of thistle by going to the thickest part of the colony and slicing across it and then chasing the roots outward. It doesn't really help to find each place where it's popped up. You need to find where the origin is, or the heaviest part of the infestation, the center of it, cut across there and chase the roots out, because you can keep digging out or killing with Roundup the piece that you can see above ground, but all this extensive root system is still underneath and you need to get that out of there. So we dig, and if the bed is badly infested with thistle, I'll dig out the other stuff, clean the thistle out of the root mass, and then replant it someplace else while I smother or continue to dig out the bed.
I don't know why I totally forgot about smother that before we would do a herbicide. Michelle, I just know Stephander is not a grass substitute, right?
No, Stephanandra, yeah, you can't walk through it. And so it's more like using cotoneasters or
it's more of a shrub border ground cover. Yeah, type. It's a woody plant, but it covers the ground, and it's only about 2 feet high at the most.
Yeah. Jackie's wondering about whether dried hydrangea blooms can be pruned off in the spring. Certainly. You can prune them off or break them off. And how far down the stem should they be trimmed depends on what kind of hydrangea you've got. If it's the white snowball hydrangea or a panicle hydrangea with the conical clusters, that you can cut down as far as you want to cut down. But if it's a blue or pink, you need that tip bud. You might have to look at our Friday from 2 Fridays ago where we showed the tip buds. You need the tip bud to have that stem flower. If you're going to cut it down below the tip bud, then cut it way back, let it grow back and bloom next year. And oak leaf hydrangeas are the same as the blue or pink. The tip bud is going to make all the difference right now. How do you keep Creeping Jenny out of the lawn? Ha 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 ha. You don't. We call it a no plant zone between anything like ground ivy, Creeping Jenny, some of the plants that crawl across the top of the ground. We have an area where we either make a stone path or a wide edge and keep that spot bare or just mulched so that anything green that shows up there, we can see it from a distance and know to keep pulling it back. But there's things that creep across the top of the ground are really hard. And oh my gosh, Ruth is dealing with creeping bellflower, Campanula rapunculoides. What a great name for a punky plant, Campanula rapunculoides. It creeps, and once it gets a top off of the creeping root, it develops a tap root from that place. I'm only ever dug those out, or like with thistle, if you want to smother the bed or use a herbicide on it after you've taken out the things that you want to save, that works, but it takes time because there's a lot of stored starch in those tap roots. Let's see. Do you know of sedges that will take road salt and sun? Marilyn wants to know. What was the one that we had at the zoo? Carex.
It was a Carex.
Muskingamensis was wonderful. It took foot traffic. It took the salt that they used on the sidewalks at the zoo and just kept on going. It needs sun, but so I wouldn't be putting it in the shade. But and it's not something you can control real easily. It's going to spread, and it spreads by underground runners. It doesn't spread far, like it doesn't pop up 2 or 3 feet away, but it is a continual continual spread. It just it kind of bowls you over with continued continuity. Diane has some ZZ plants that get black streaks on the stem. ZZ, this is the indoor plant, zigzag stems on it. I don't know that plant well enough to talk about black streak, why it would get black streaks on the stems. Did these black streaks seem to be watery, Diane? Or are they just color, or are they a different feel to them too? Okay, Karen is continuing with a discussion about Stephanandra. She said that she has a client who wants to replace her front lawn with Stephanandra, and that Karen has already told her you're gonna have to keep it off the walkway and the city sidewalk, and it won't be fun to get the maple seedlings out. I will say that you're not going to get very many maple seedlings in there because it keeps the maple seeds from getting through and then shades them deep enough that you don't get very many tree seedlings coming up in it. But it is
If it's growing right.
Yeah, but it is the case that if you've got a ground cover that's tall and can leap over, it's going to lap over onto the sidewalk, and you do have to keep it trimmed. The deer ate some 14-year-old sun gold euonymus shrubs. They have gall. Can I cut them way back to get the gall out and revive them? Gall, that tumorous looking thing on euonymus, and it can be on other kinds of plants too, but you most often see it on euonymus, is a bacterial infection. And you can cut below the gall and hope that you've got it out, but it becomes systemic in the plant, so it's not likely that the plant's going to recover very well from that. Yeah, deer do like euonymus though. Yeah, Donna has dealt with creeping bellflower too. Yeah, the regular roots, they're when you let them stay there for long enough, they do get a deeper root, that Campanula rapunculoides. I had it all along a neighbor's fence and one of my clients. And what I did was I had to make sure that all youngsters got kept out. So even if I didn't see anything growing along the fence line, I would slice down with my spade all the way along the fence line and pull the soil forward and pull out roots as they were coming in, because when they creep, they're near the surface. It's once they get foliage on top that they start making that deep root and become harder and harder to get out. We want to spell the Carex muskingamensis. The Carex,
Not me.
The Carex are Carex. I'll put it in the chat. Carex, and musking, Imensis. I don't know why it's muskingamensis. Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
I noticed Karen was asking what's our favorite native plants. Right.
I just told you one yesterday.
What? Mine is penstemon.
Yes, he loves penstemon. Stephen just is a nut for penstemons.
But it depends on the situation.
Just yesterday, I came in and told Steve, I said, you know how much we like little blue stem? We love little blue stem. We've always loved little blue stem. But wherever we've grown it before, we've grown it in a natural area where we can just let everything grow up and you don't have to treat it like a garden. Well, I've got some in the place that we treat like a garden. And we've started seeing the butterflies flying around. So it's time that I can cut things down. I'm doing it gradually, but I'm cutting them down. So I went to cut down the little blue stem, and you don't have to cut it down. Here's an ornamental grass that's 3 feet, 4 feet high. And all you do is just pull away the old stems, and there it is, the nice crown just sitting there waiting to come up. I love that. I love that.
Yeah. 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 It really depends on what situation we're in. And for native plants, there's a lot of shrubs I like, and some of the wildflowers and trees can go on and on.
I like the one that I can't grow. I keep meeting things. I go, oh, I would like to have that.
Well, that always happens wherever you travel. The one plant you're going to like the most, if you're traveling out of your zone,
yeah.
One plant you like the most won't grow in your zone.
Yeah, or the ones that are hard to find. Ginseng should be in our native area here because it belongs in pine oak barrens, which is what we were before. And ginseng is not easy to find as a seed or a root. They sell it at great cost for health reasons at health food stores, but not otherwise. Karen is wondering about that euonymus again. Should she get the euonymus out of the bed since they have a lot of gall? Good idea, but the bacteria is within the plant. It's not sitting in the soil. it will get into new plants through damage and contact with still living matter from the other plants. I've taken euonymus out, dug it out, and replaced it with euonymus, and they were fine. Because sometimes it's because the plant was stressed. Maybe somebody cut it too many times. They sprayed it with too much stuff. Maybe they walked on it a lot, and there were a lot of breaks in it, and the gall got in. No telling where it came from. Thank you, Marilyn. It's named for the Muskingum River in Ohio. Carex muskingamensis is from an Ohio river. And yeah, it probably grows right with the fishing pole bamboo.
Yeah.
We have seen, talk about natives that are invasive. We have been in places, beautiful big gardens, acreage gardens, and you come to the back of the garden and you're looking at a wall. I mean, you're looking at a wall of bamboo that they're keeping right at the edge through great effort. And it's was it 18 feet tall at that one place?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've seen it taller in other places, but
Michelle wants to know about cutting down a serviceberry. She cut it down and she cut it down last year, and now there's 20 2-foot shoots coming up from it. Can it grow into a bush, or should I just leave it and let it grow back into a tree? When a woody plant suckers up like that, one or more of those suckers will get ahead of the rest, because it is a tree by its nature, and when they get above the rest of them, they'll take off, and some of the others will stay out. You can keep it as a shrub if you cut it back every once in a while. I mean, you're gonna have to keep it like you keep any shrub that you're keeping small. You'd have to let it get to a certain point and then start thinning them out and taking out more of them. But if left on its own, to its own devices, it'll become a tree again in the long run.
Karen also asked if the cup plant is native.
Yes, the cup plant is native. Well, let's see. It is native in a few places in southern Michigan. Oh yes, it's native in northern Michigan too, when you're along the Superior Shore. No, not Superior Shore, the northern Lake Michigan shore. I know it's native along there. But a lot of lower Michigan was not prairie originally. It was forest, and cup plant didn't belong in the forest. But in those places that were prairie that have names like now I can't remember any of them, but there are places that are Drayton Plains, for instance, was a prairie area. Windsor has a restored prairie garden, and they're sitting on what's called a drum kettle prairie,
yeah,
like that. Yeah, so it's native, but it picks its place. Pruning a really old New Dawn. New Dawn is, if you've never grown New Dawn or seen New Dawn, we're looking at a 2-story high, full house wide shrub vine, climbing rose, just an incredibly big plant with lots of flowers on it once a year.
What about thorns?
Oh, the thorns are awful.
And how do I prune it? Very, very carefully.
Yeah, I got stuck in a New Dawn rose on a rook garden.
So did I. Al.
You did too? Yep.
Yeah, remember you sent me there one year to do it.
Yeah,
I was stuck, my sleeve was stuck.
Yeah, one winter, this New Dawn we let it go the whole way it could go and had anchored it in some places. The anchors came loose in the winter and it peeled forward off the wall. The whole 2-story house-wide thing peeled forward, and I didn't want to cut it back. It was still alive, so I was putting it back up to the main supports. And while I was doing that, the sides lapped over and grabbed me from both sides, and nobody knew I was on the roof. Nobody could see me. I thought, I'm never getting out of here. I'm stuck forever in this thing. And that's what happened to you when you tried to do it for us too, huh, Steve?
Oh, I wasn't stuck that bad because I could have clipped because I was cutting back, but my hand got twisted in there and I couldn't get, their thorns are not fun. All I was doing was pruning it back, cutting it back. You had me cut it back along. It was the same trip where I went to Pierre and Cheryl's too.
Okay. Well, if you've got a really old one and it's gotten thick, it's gotten deep, because we never let ours get deep. After it bloomed every year, we sheared it back to the wall. So we clipped all of the blooming branches that were hanging out with the flowers on them, clipped those all back. If it has been allowed to have the blooming branches branch and keep going, then you really need to cut everything back to the structure that's the biggest canes against the wall and start over again if you want to control it that way. And it's making, Karen says it's making the arbor lean. Well, yeah, I guess so. It's a heavy, big plant. It really is a big plant. How did I get out? Judith wants to know how I got out. There is a doctor from Mass General that lives in the building behind our client's building, and he has a window that looks onto their roof garden. And he occasionally would talk to me when I'm up there, and he opened up the window and said, "Are you all right?" I said, "I think I am." And he kind of talked me out of it. He could see where I was stuck, and I couldn't see. It was in my hair, it was on my shirt. So he kind of talked me out, and I was able to get things loose because I was planning on cutting myself loose, and I couldn't see what I was cutting. So I did get some help from a window person. I felt kind of like the New York City person there. Donna, several button bushes last spring. Oh, button bush is a warm weather plant, like the hibiscus. I could cut it all. I found it kind of like the daffodil thing when I said, I cannot handle this anymore. You're way too big. You're way too crazy. I've tried to prune you this way. I've tried to prune you that way. So I'm just cutting you off. So I cut it right off at ground level. And then it was only 5 to 6 feet tall. It bloomed a little later than it would bloom, but it was wonderful. So I cut them all the way down and watched in terror the first year because it wasn't my plant that I was, don't look until you killed it. But about the same time that the hibiscus sprouted, it sprouted. So I think you're probably okay.
I can't remember the name of that trillium that's up there right now.
That's one of the red
The red ones.
Yeah, I don't know if it's well, red trillium is one. Another one is called stinking Benjamins.
Yeah.
But it is a trillium, and it's one of the red trilliums. I think
every picture that you're seeing as questions were from our yard this week. So that one's in our yard.
Yeah, they're modeled leaves on several of the trilliums. The yellow trillium called toad trillium, I think, has modeled leaves like that. But they're cool, aren't they? They're nice.
Yeah.
And what's nice about trillium is if you grow trillium, if you've got a place to grow trillium, then you can grow different kinds of trillium, and they will very readily cross between species, and you start getting unusual things like that kind of leaf with a white flower, or a yellow nodding one with a double set of flowers that you get on. What was the one that Jerry had in the wood? Remember Jerry?
Oh yeah, what was that one?
It had one that it stacked its flowers. It had its leaves. It had 3 leaves and then a stem and 3 more leaves and then the flowers up above. That's fun to do. And it gets to be addictive. Like Cheryl and Pierre were talking about their friend Hitch with his snowdrops, that he has 400 varieties of snowdrops. So many that he's forgotten what some of them are now. Yeah. Our double bloodroot just started blooming. The single bloodroot bloomed, and there still blooms out there in a couple of places?
Yeah, just a couple, and there's a couple down the ones that migrated out of our little well.
Oh, that's right. They bloomed a little later.
Yeah.
While the single bloodroot was blooming, the double bloodroot was just breaking the surface. So quite a different plant, really. Just
a warning about trillium. The deer do like them.
Yeah, they like them so much that they will paw them up in the off season and eat, because the bud, after the trillium goes dormant, or appears to us to go, the top part dies back, it makes next year's bulb and ascends in the soil when it starts getting cool in the fall. So the trillium is sitting right below the surface, waiting to pop up when the weather gets good. And the deer will paw away the soil and eat the bud right off the top of the trillium, which is it's not a nice thing. Judith has a seed starting question, Steve.
Seeds.
Do we know any reliable, comprehensive guide to the light and heat requirements that vegetables and herbs need for germination? I just discovered that tomatoes need dark, not light, to germinate. Yeah, a lot of things need dark to germinate. And needing dark to germinate simply means they need to be covered, whereas needing light to germinate means that you scatter the seeds on the surface, because light promotes the germination process. So you don't actually have to put them in a closet or anything, but you need to cover them over. Yeah, Park's Success with Seeds is really good. It's out of print. I'm going to go and grab a copy of it so that I can tell you the kinds of things that are in it. It's out of print, so you're looking for used books, but it's Park's Success with Seeds from Park Seed Company.
Yeah, we've used it quite a bit, and it still works for all the seeds too. Uh,
And if
I used it when I was in college.
you're not looking at that,
Well, I went to college at 35.
the Seed Savers catalog is also a wonderful place for really detailed information. So is Shepherd's, no, not Shepherd Seeds. Johnny's Select. What's the Select seeds called, you guys?
Johnny Select. There's a Johnny
Johnny
Select.
Select, yeah. And you can go online. You don't even have to get the catalog. You can just click on the catalog and it'll take you to videos showing them starting things. So
Yeah.
for instance, let's see what we got in here. Park Successful Seeds. Give me a name of a vegetable. Squash.
Squash. Oh, you were just looking up squash.
I was looking for, okay. Okay, so here's well, Jerusalem cherry. Well, okay, where's Jerusalem cherry? It says germination indoors in late winter, following Christmas, maintain a temperature within the medium of 70 degrees during germination, which takes 15 to 20 days. Don't cover the seed as light aids in germination. If that's the kind of thing you're looking for, then you're looking for Park Success with Seeds. And like I say, it's out of print, but they're out there. They're out there in number. You'll be able to.
Carol said it's easy to find on Amazon and eBay.
Yeah. Our hepatica has bloomed, Karen. Here,
Yep.
Karen is asking about it.
It's been going for about 2 weeks now.
Do you know, believe this? Corky went to high school with Hitch, the snowdrop person that, so she probably, so you're one removed from Pierre and Cheryl then too. You probably met Pierre Benrup at some point because Hitch is a good friend of his. Okay.
Small world.
Why don't you spent so much time getting your topics ready that people have been asking you about, Steve? Why do you want to go to one of those and take it from there?
We talked about seeds here. There were some Janet's sister sent us this picture, and we had to look close because she said it was all the covers from her maple flowers, all the old flowers falling in such dense. That's going to probably create a lot of maple seedlings
Yeah, well, the maple seedlings that are developing up on the tree, those are the spent parts of the flower that are not necessary anymore.
Yeah.
And some years it's a lot.
Some years you could get a ton of them, and I know them as the helicopters that we did. And if once they start to pop up, if you get them at this stage early when they're little, and just pull them or cut the foliage off or hoe it at that stage, they're easy. The roots aren't very established yet, and you could pull them out. And you can see the first leaf is just starting. And once they do start, their roots start to spread out. And it makes it even a little harder to pull sometimes. And that's
Or Norway maples.
early Norway maple. And then it gets to be like that later. And if it's that, it could be hard to pull.
And some of them do die. I mean, they don't all make it, so you're not going to pull that many big ones.
Some of them, yeah, for sure.
For me, the most important time to pull out tree seedlings in a garden is the fall. You go out in the fall, your herbaceous plants are descending and are, carpeting the ground. And the things that are still sticking up are the woody plants. And they're the ones that survive the spring. And that's the important time to weed out the trees.
So we collected, I went past one. We collected and tested a lot of maple seeds, the helicopters. And during our son's wedding, we asked friends to, rather than throw rice or birdseed, let's throw maple seeds. And we assigned Rick's brother to hand out them packages. You could see people getting them. And when the bride and groom came, we threw maple seeds.
I think the most fun thing about it was watching people looking in the envelope and saying, oh, what these are, and then showing each other their techniques for throwing them.
There were different, yeah, they didn't want to waste them because they only got about 20 or 25 in each envelope, if that. So, but we did test them and they loved it. And a few years later, we repeated it with the grandkids. And though stuff like that is what gardening to me is about, that you could incorporate it into special events of your life and everywhere. So that was special with the maple seedling party for us.
Do you mind backing up to your Red Admiral picture, Steve?
The Red Admiral.
Yeah, it was at the beginning of the maple seeds. Maybe the third picture.
Oh, at the beginning of the maple seeds. I thought it was.
Yeah. I think it was you were talking
Oh,
about
yeah.
what the seeds
That
look
one.
like. Yes, and that is a Red Admiral, and those and the American ladies, and now the white cabbage moth and some of the white ones that look like the cabbage moth, they've been flying around a lot. I'm really encouraged this year. We're seeing a lot more than we've seen before. And I lay that to the development of the garden, that there's more places where they can spend the winter. Margaret, hi Margaret, is asking about cannabis, believe it or not. She says while they were being snowbirds in Orange City, California, she learned a lot about cannabis, and she's looking for seeds to use as a cover crop. But nobody has them locally in Wayne County, or do you know where to get any? I got seeds from my sister in Massachusetts, medical marijuana. Was that one of the
Yep.
one of the loopholes for marijuana came first in Massachusetts, and she sent me some seeds. And I think when I looked them up, 5 seeds cost $25, something like that. So I don't know that you're going to find seed for sale at a reasonable price, because the seed that's out there now is very special, particular seed, you know, Maui Wowie and Ortonville Orange.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. So I can't really help you with that. But if you've got somebody that is growing a marijuana plant and is going to let it go past the flower bud stage, which is what everybody wants. They want the flower buds because there's a concentration of the cannabinoid oils and stuff in there. But if they're going to grow it beyond there and let it flower and go to seed, well, then you can get a bunch of seeds. But you need to have somebody that was going to grow the plant for you. So you grow one plant and then save your own seed, because they make a ton of seed.
Yep. Right here, we need to give somebody a pat on the back, and I can't remember her name, the wisteria.
Mary Ellen.
Mary Ellen. So she sent us pictures of her wisteria in full bloom, and it really pretty on top of this pergola arbor. Pergola. It's old, and so she asked us what we would suggest, and one of the things was that you could cut it down, but we also suggested keeping one healthy, easy, flexible one to lay it aside. And oh, why didn't it switch? And she did. She has it ready to take off and move when they start constructing, and way to go. I mean, that's really
that's an
the
amazing
stuff
job.
we'd like to see. She's willing to try and willing to do it. Looks amazing to us.
Yeah,
So
that's a lot of work to skinny it down to that one, but that's the
it
best thing to
really
do. That one.
is. So,
Ruth is pointing out that red admirals and American ladies migrate here from the south in the spring. Well, I'm certain that some would move around, but we have found chrysalises in the garden, and we wait until we see them flying in our garden to say, okay, now the conditions are right and our chrysalises will have emerged. But we definitely find the chrysalises in the garden.
Yeah.
Michigan Gardener. Michelle is recommending Michigan Gardener. Has good information on YouTube.
it's M.I. Gardner. It's not Michigan Gardener. There's
M.I. All right, it's M.I. Gardner. I think there's one note back here about it is a kind of an overly enthusiastic voice that you gotta kind of get past, that he's a real high energy kind of guy. Oh, Karen Harrison threw maple leaves that had changed color at her daughter's wedding. That's cool too. Yep.
So, is there anything else?
Nothing new here now.
Okay. Well, people should be watching out for lily leaf beetles that are out there.
Right now, they're out.
They are out, and they are busy, and they can, whoops.
I've seen the first egg masses as well as the beetles. So watch for those little red eggs laid in a line on the leaves, on the stem. Scrub those out, because those become those ugly, terrible black, gooey slug larvae things. Ugh, ugh.
So that's the fritillaria, and they're on it now. And my job while Janet is gone is to go out and keep taking care of them. They also get on this. This is another type of fritillaria, and I already forgot the name that you told me it was. That
Crown Imperial.
Imperial.
Fritillaria imperialis. Yeah.
And they'll be on there, and they hide. They hide. It's harder to find them on this plant because they see you and go under the leaf real quick. They're willing. You could see them under the leaf anyway, but they're willing to drop to the ground too.
But they're just beginning to do damage. You can see a couple of small holes and
Yep.
chomps out of the edge of the leaf. But given a little while, they just eat it down to nothing.
Yeah.
Last year, when I first saw them on our son's lilies, I picked them off for a while, but I was too late. They were already eggs and larvae. So I cut the lily down. I said, I'm going to deny you any more food. I cut the lily down and threw the whole thing out. And I've got far fewer now this year to deal with. And I think I can stay ahead of them.
Karen had a question about clover and lawn that we might have missed.
Oh, that's true. Micro clover thank you, Karen. Using micro clover to replace a lawn where grass doesn't grow well with some shade. And if micro clover, which I'm not familiar with, if it will grow there, I don't see why you wouldn't use it. It's not, the clovers are not easy to control at the edge. Lawn is a little easier to keep an edge on a garden. Clover does a lot of growing along long branch and lapping over and like creeping Jenny, creeping across the top of the ground. So it's not as easy to keep under control. But if something will grow there, if moss will grow there or micro clover, go for it.
We've got clumps of clover within our lawn. This is bittercress that's in our lawn right now, which we don't mind at all. It gets in there, but we have dandelions, but there's clumps of clover, and I don't mind it in the lawn at all. It's got a nice green, and
ours is Dutch clover. I'm wondering whether micro clover might be one of the oxalis. They have smaller leaves and they creep. And a lot of the oxalis are called clover of one kind or another, or shamrock of one kind or another. Yeah. Where did you take this picture, Stephen? Should I be out there right now? Because that's all.
No, this is not our yard.
Good.
This was one that I mixed up with, that I could get mixed up with the bittercress.
Oh, okay. Well, bittercress, the flower stands up. This is chickweed, where the flower is sitting down low.
Yep. And it will produce seeds too.
Yeah, and I just need to, if that was ours, I would get a piece of newspaper on top of that and some mulch on top of it, because that would take a bit. It doesn't have a deep root, but it's rooted at every node of the branches that are laying on the ground. So it's easier to kill than it is to dig out.
Yep.
A micro lover sod for shady area. Wow. This old house recently featured a micro lover sod for a shady area.
Okay. So they made it.
Okay, lily leaf beetle, we have a question on whether they go on daylilies too. No, they go on lilies and fritillaria. Thank goodness, because there's a big lily family when you start adding in the Solomon seal and the hostas and the daylilies. They're all in the lily family. No, they're not. They're fortunately not for the whole family. Lilies, the true lilies, lilium and fritillaria are the two that we know that they go and eat.
So even Janet and I walk out in our yard and say, "What is that?"
I said, "Stephen, why did I burn them?" And
I have not seen that before, not in this yard. And we're both going, "What the heck is that?" And you look and you see leaves coming up, but those are the Virginia bluebell leaves. I mean, they're not the leaves to this guy. So you're thinking it's coming from a bear. Its foliage is not up yet. And so Janet was sitting there thinking about it. And then she thought about the flowers, and we realized that the flowers, even though on this Virginia, they aim down, if they were up face, you would see very much see the similarities in that.
And that's when I realized, and I texted Steve, I know what it is. We bought a Virginia ciliata, which is not evergreen. It's the Virginia with the great big leaves. We bought a Virginia ciliata last year, and that's where I planted it. So we're looking at the flower coming up first and the big leaves will come up afterwards. And accidentally, maybe accidentally, maybe I did it on purpose. That's a nice cover for the Virginia bluebells when they go down.
It will work.
Yeah, so I'll Virginia bluebells and double it up with Virginia ciliata.
Yep. And then the cold, I think we need to show the
Okay.
cold effects.
Debbie asked about this. It was an email or a text, one or the other. She said, my hyacinths are coming up. She said, my pink ones are washed out pink this year, and they're not, usually they're much more vibrant pink. She said, the blue ones are okay, but the pink, what's going on? So I told her, because we've learned in talking to people who force plants for flower shows. I mean, we're talking professional greenhouse growers who are growing things to bring them into bloom to be beautiful for a flower show. That if the temperature is not right when the flower bud is forming, then the flower bud the parts of the flower that are forming don't get the chemicals that they need, and the color can be washed out or muted or in daylilies and clematis and other things. So Steve was photographing some pictures of what happens when you change chemicals. So we started with 2 shot glasses there. That's rice milk in there. We were going to do it with water and went, no, cells, plants are nothing but clear cells stacked in the millions together. And each clear cell has in it a number of chemicals in a liquid solution. So they're not totally clear because they've got stuff in them, but light goes through them. And you add chemicals to that and it makes us see color. We see through the clear side of the plant the same way that we see through the clear glass. So we put a drop of red into each of these. Just 1 drop of red. And mixed it in. So we've got 2 matching pinks. They're both got 1 drop of red in them. They're both the same. Now, red in plants, quite often what gets a plant red is anthocyanins, which are a chemical that a plant produces to protect itself from the cold. That's why rose bushes, when they leaf out, come out red, and peonies come out red. They are loaded up with anthocyanins to protect them from the cold. So if it's cold when a plant is forming, its flower buds, there's a lot of anthocyanin there to come in and give the plant the red purple color. So we're putting in a drop of blue.
No, that's red still. That was the
that's right.
second
We added
red.
That's right. We added the second drop of red. So if there's more
For one of them.
anthocyanin in one, see how much more intense just 1 drop makes that solution. And that's the same thing that's happening inside the cells of the plant. The more anthocyanin, the deeper the color is going to be. And then things change when you start. So now we've added 2 drops of blue on the right and 1 drop of blue on the left, because the blue chemicals are part of the new growth sequence too. And we'll say that the plant on the left got less of it. And this year.
Oh, we added, wait, I went past green. That's right.
Yeah, we'll get into the chlorophyll in just a second. When this spring in March, when it should have been cold, it was warm. And if those hyacinths were breaking the surface and coming up where it was warm, they didn't have to produce as much anthocyanin. So they didn't have as much pink, red, reddish purple in their veins. So when we added the blue, you can see that it's more purple on one side than the other. Yeah, that's the blue. It's more purple on the one side than on the other. And then now the plant is up, the soil is warm, and chlorophyll starts flooding into the leaves and all the cells of the plants. Because even the flowers do some photosynthesizing. So we're adding a drop of green to each one. And then you can see how washed out and kind of muted the color is on the left. That's what's happened to the plants this year. Some of them are just fine. Some of them are deeper color than they would be in other years. But it was fun to play around with it and say, here's what happens. It's nice to have something, since I couldn't make any snowmen this year or snow creatures and paint them with food coloring because there just weren't any good snowy days. I got to use my food coloring for something else.
Yep. And that turned out cool.
Okay. Karen has a client with an old ornamental maple that's on its last leg, has so many cracks in the trunk and hardly any branches left. Is it worth trying to keep? Only if it's got a good base on it below the damage to the trunk. Yep. And you're willing to let it grow back from the base. Once the top woody part of a plant is damaged. So looking at Steve's picture there with the crabapple that we've got here, I took the whole top layer off of this crabapple. And I would like it to be a little bit lower than it is because it's still in the window. But it wasn't producing any branches from further down. And so even with more light in there, it's not producing branches. I'm not going to be able to get it to grow into any different shape. It's the way it goes. Judith knows that microclover needs to be replaced, lasts maybe 3 years. She has a 2-year-old microclover in her yard. It replaced clover that died off in the bad drought 2 years ago, so I don't hold that against it. The grass it was interplanted with died too. So I don't know whether it survives past 3 years, and she doesn't think that it's an oxalis. Well, we're just gonna have to try microclover, Steve.
Yep.
Sounds like a cool plant. Yeah,
Mhm.
Michelle's also read that microclovers are short-lived.
Uh,
Thank you, Marilyn. An extension link about microclover. So here's where I have to learn. I think Sonia has 2 different screens going, but I'm gonna go and look and see if I can find that. Go ahead, Steve. You're on.
All right. Hang on. Oh, we did the wisteria. You did. Ah, okay. First, a friend asked us about identifying a tree and send us some pictures. And she wasn't sure what it is, but we figured out what it was, and I forgot to switch the pictures around to put the one at the top. But we found out it was a metasequoia, a dawn redwood. This is Germaine, and that's her metasequoia. She's had to limit up because that's when it was almost first planted, and they grow and they get big, and they call themselves, I call them the armpit. You could see armpits. No other tree has armpits like that. Bald cypress has very similar look and very similar appearance, but none of that in it. And the bald cypress is alternate, and this one is opposite. The metasequoia is an opposite bud, even though occasionally it has just single buds, but generally it's opposite all the way up. You could see it. It's opposite branched. And they get big. It gets big, the dawn redwoods. And that's just standing next to a fairly young one. And these were the images she sent. And it was the way the bud, you could see the arrangement of the buds are opposite. And the puffiness, she questioned whether it was a bald cypress, metasequoia, or possibly a larch. And larch is a possible, but we don't think so because of the color of the bark, for sure. And on the subject of metasequoias, we planted one for our son. We planted it that size, right here.
Actually, it was a little small. It was only about 3 feet tall, but it was in
Yep.
that size pot.
And that's it. 3 years, 4 years later?
3 years later. 3 years later.
3 years later. And of course, we went and looked at the roots to check because of things that were happening in the tree. And we went down and found a lot of issues with the roots and tried to correct them as best we could. There was also some cracks on the bark, and we were concerned about, and there was a big spruce in back of it, and it was more one-sided. But it was also developing a flat top. It should be a much pointier top. It was going up and flattening out. It should have that type of look to it like this arborvitae does. One straight leader going up. And this is it now. And the spruce is gone and that's the trunk of that spruce that was there. I tried to make the picture as close as I could to compare. It's grown quite a bit. And we went in and took a look at the roots. And this was the before. This root right here. Whoops, what happened? Oh, that small root is this root right here. That one eventually we removed. These were all, this was an adventitious root coming out. They weren't the flares.
You look at the size of the pot that it started out in, and that being 3 feet tall and a fast grower, the roots should have been out 10 feet from that tree, 3 feet
Yeah.
tall. And they
So,
must have
and-
wrapped around that pot 3 or 4 times easily.
So that was, it was interesting to us to see, and we think the tree is going to survive and grow as well as it can. We did damage the roots and slowed it down. Oops, some, but okay. There was a question about the ascot,
Ascot rainbow.
ascot rainbow, and it's about cutting it down now.
Go ahead and cut it down. If it survived the winter, it's sprouting from the still living stems, and you'll find the new growth coming at the bottom. There may be some new growth at the top too. Just cut that off because you don't need the winter damaged, winter ravaged stems on it. In a milder climate than our zone 5-6, it makes it through the winter and can look kind of nice in the springtime. And it did that for us one year when it was really, really mild. But otherwise, cut it back and just let it come up from there. But careful with your skin. Stay away from.
Yep, it does have that. Could in the sun it could burn. Wattle, you work. Janet did wattling today at with the Waterford Library group. She cut down our son's willow and got all these pieces of willow, which is very nice to make wattle and arbor out of. It's very flexible, and this is the one that they worked on at the library before they started. It was starting to deteriorate. It looks good still, but it's starting to. Some of the branches are very dry, and so you got to renew it every now and then. And they brought the twigs there and lined them up and decided what to do and worked on them. You can see some of them were quite tall, very tall.
I cut that willow every 4 years or so in order to use the branches. And I like to cut them before they get leaf on them. And this time they had leaf on them. But yeah, they've strapped it to the arbor, and Priscilla is reaching up to bend it over and strap it to the other side of the arbor.
Yep. And after they strap it, then they go around with copper wire. They do it first with the zip strip and then do the copper wire after. It's a lot easier to do it that way. It sounds like extra work. Why not do it with copper wire all at once? But if you make a mistake and have to, it's easier to cut that zip strip to move the branch if you have to, because you're weaving back and forth sometimes. And that's what it looked like after. And it really looks nice.
It's much fuller now. It's a great arbor. You may have noticed that it wasn't even high enough for a person standing up to walk under it. It's meant for kids. The kids come in to the library, and invariably they will run through that arbor and across through the backside, and they see more of the garden that way. We like to have them look there. It was a lot of fun. It is so much fun working with people.
And they also did wattle fencing too. And that looks really cool. That's pretty helpful because that area in particular, there was a lot of dill that comes up. The
dill comes up there.
So it brings a lot of caterpillars, and people like to get up in there. So it's nice to have that wattle slow down. We wrote about it on Garden A to Z.
So
you search for wattle, you will find how to do it.
Yep, we've got patterns for 2 different wattle arrangements in there. It's fun to do.
And you could get this, like for instance, this one is what's coming up 178, and you could download it as a PDF. Or because this says wattle we do at the zoo, you could click on that and it would bring you to this article that we do. That's how.
We're actually at 8 o'clock, but do you want to do something with the leafy hats? Did my pictures?
All I did was just show.
Okay, people have asked what about all the leaves, and they get dense, and the plants can't come up through them. Once in a while, we'll get a heavy bunch of leaves, and we call it pushing up hats. This is Coreopsis stripteris, the big, tall, late blooming Coreopsis, a really nice native, another one that we love. And I walked by, and you could kind of see that the leaves were bubbled up, and there were a couple of leaves showing through, green leaves showing through. What I do is just reach in and just knock the hat off, and the plant is going to come through anyway. But just makes it more even because all of that was just underneath there. So sometimes that they're pushing up hats if I use leaves, and in some places in the garden where I've been working this week, in some places I don't have any leaves left at all, no leaves,
Yep.
and there's seedlings coming
Something
up.
took care of them.
Yeah. So that'll have to do it for today, I think. That's our third Free for All Friday. We're glad to have your questions anytime. You can email or text them to us. Our,
And
our,
if you send pictures too, you can do that. Please send them at high resolution, a fairly high resolution. Real low resolution pictures are hard for us to work with.
hard for us to see the detail that we need
Yep.
to identify things. Sometimes the phones do it themselves. They resize the picture themselves, and you don't have any say in it. But if you have a say in it, if you've got something that your computer program or email program asks you to resize it, tell it no, don't resize it. Just send it to us the way you took it in the first place. Some of these phones are amazing.
Yeah.
So our next Free for All Friday is April 26th, a week from now. And a week from now, Steve will be here and I will be in South Carolina.
And it will be a real interesting to see how we do it.
Yeah.
Yep. We take the leaves off the top. Judith was asking, but you don't move the rest of the leaves? Nope. We leave
Nope.
them in the garden.
I just knock them loose. That's all I do.
Yep.
Yep.
Oh.
I'm going to keep this meeting running and the recording running, Steve, so you can come over here and the two of us can figure out together how to make this right.
All right.
And we'll just say good night to people.
I leave my share on.
Yeah, leave your share on because it's something here is doing something very different. I hope you have a great weekend. It is supposed to be getting cold at night, and that's what it's supposed to do in April. I'm not worried about the plants. Those that are living out there are living out there, and they're fine. Oh, there's your Ascot rainbow, Steve.
Yeah, I put it up there when we talked about it.
Oh, okay. Well, see, I was not at the time.
You weren't there.
It's there. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. So we hope you have a great weekend gardening and a great week gardening, and we'll talk to you next Friday. Thanks for being here, everybody.